Good morning. It is Monday morning, November 4th, and it is definitely November. It's a little below freezing outside. What was now bright and colorful in the background behind me is now gray and leafless, and we have turned the corner from one month to another, and just like we've turned the corner from one unit to another. So, welcome. Some comments on Unit 2 and what we saw and what we did. I really think that was an excellent discussion that occurred about the legal forms of business organization, and I hope that everyone did gain something out of it. So many of you did comment that you learned something new, that there were things that you hadn't realized, that there are things that are just not readily apparent to the casual observer. But every business really should have a proper legal form, and it does impact so many things about how that business operates and how that business runs. It's important for us to understand the factors that go into choosing that form and some of the effects and consequences if it's not right, some of the benefits if it is right, and that there are complexities. And one of the things I noticed so many people talked about, it seemed to be the factors that most people talked about were control and protecting your personal assets. And these are very interesting topics because, yes, I think we all want to have as much control as we can and recognize quite a bit of the difficulties that can come when we don't have control. Protecting personal assets is absolutely a goal, but I think you saw that it's not always absolute. Even when you get out to the corporate forms of organization, it's not always absolute. And I mentioned several people that I've been in situations where I worked for a company that was organized as a corporation, a C corporation. So it's one of the more complex forms. It should have the greatest protections for its liabilities. It had multiple stockholders. One of the stockholders was actually a major corporation. It was their venture capital arm that owned a big chunk of this business. And you know what? The banks still wanted the principal shareholder, the founder, to personally guarantee the financing package, the loans and the lines of credit to this company. So sometimes that is not a given in any situation. That's a negotiated choice between the firm and the bank. But sometimes those total protections that we seek just don't exist, and was something that I think that was worthy of note. Okay, this week again, we're going to not just go in the standard progression through the book. Last week we jumped around, and this week we're going to do it again. We're going to use chapters 6, 9, and 12. And we're actually going to go back and revisit some things about that we did in unit 1. We're going to talk more about strategy and planning. We're going to talk about them in depth, and in depth I mean more about the formal concepts. How do they work? How do you do things with them? How do they help you in operating a business, really of any size, not just the small business? And then we're going to do two other topics. One is a little bit, may not be applicable to everybody, but it helps us learn about things. We're going to talk about locations of businesses. And in those topics about location, it's not just, picking a vacant storefront and moving in there. It's why would you pick a location for a certain kind of business, and an examination of the factors almost of demographics and how they affect businesses of all types. So I think that's another interesting topic that many of us we need to consider. And then we are going to start on one of the most important things, and that's financing. Financing obviously is important. Many of you mentioned it in your discussion of the legal form of business. But there are some basic questions that need to be at least started, and it's not the first time we'll touch on them during the course. We're going to touch on the basic question here of debt versus equity, which is a very interesting topic. It's a critical subject in starting and in maintaining a business. And it has, again, a lot of legal applications. It has a lot of operational implications. It's amazing how something as basic as that can get out into all the aspects of your business. So this week, I think we're going to have some interesting discussions. You're going to go back, as I said, in the discussion and kind of revisit Unit 1, and that's done with a purpose. It's that important. And then also, what we're going to ask you to do is not write a business plan. Just give us the outline of one. Take a look of what now, having looked at it with two different lenses, one in week 1 and now in week 3. Just what are the elements that you would include? It's an abbreviated version of the business planning process. Okay, it's just to get us familiar with the process and what you would need to consider for your particular chosen situation, the one you choose to examine. Okay, so that's really the whole point. One thing I didn't mention last week too, I discovered quite by accident that the grading rubric for the written assignment was not actually hooked into the grading system. So what I did was, and I think I made it clear to people, but I just like to emphasize that, was I did use the assignment rubric to create the grades. There's no grading rubric. You can go back and click on each section to see what your specific score was there. I would like to emphasize, though, that every consideration that was in the rubric that's provided with the PDF about an assignment that you can click on and see was considered in the creation of those grades. So that's what's important. This week we're back to discussion board. The discussion board rubric I know is working. I'm going to grade with discussion. Grade the discussion with the rubric, and maybe the commentary might be a little more brief this time, because if it's very similar to what you saw last time, I can go through it a little bit more quickly. But in the overall sense, I think the discussion has been excellent, and people are really picking up on it. I think that's where a lot of the learning takes place in this course. So those are some questions. Several of you have had the need to contact me. That's fine. It's working well. And remember, if you have a question, a general course question that you think might, the specific answer might help you, but it's something that's not very specific to your situation, go ahead and use that Ask the Instructor discussion, and we'll get that out in front of everybody, so that's good. Of course, if it's personal to your personal situation, continue to contact me through email, and that will work. So thank you again. I think after 2 weeks, a quarter of the course, the progress is where I hope it will continue to stay, and I think it's been a beneficial course for a lot of us so far, and I'm just looking forward to continuing. Thank you very much.